missed it.
Oh, good morning,
I don't know if
guys.
we're
Good
talking
morning.
about it.
Good morning.
Maybe someone else.
So our morning started off like a well-polished machine over here. We were actually sitting. We were sitting first. Good morning, everybody. So we were setting up these chairs because we're both sitting in chairs, little stools, and I was talking. Yeah, I was talking to someone over here, and Kimba had asked me to stand up, and as he asked me to stand up, he had moved my chair, and I had a whole thing of, I had a matcha in my hand, and Melayne had just handed me, and he moved my chair, and I was listening, and then I sat back down, and there was no chair. I flipped over my back.
You did a back roll.
I did a back roll. The
Smooth.
matcha flew all over me and the dojo, and everybody was like, "Oh, this is crazy," except for I mean, it wasn't as comical to me because I was now covered in matcha and the floor was covered, and then one of the students went to, help, and then she kicked over her tea, and that went all over the floor. And then, and the irony is, while that happened to me, I was talking to a student who was getting ready to be taken to the emergency because she has a bladder infection. So all this is happening at one time. So anyway, how are you guys doing? How's your day starting off? I'm sure hoping it's starting off more, with less interesting action. Yeah, with less action than ours did. And there they go. They're, by the way, driving by to go.
It was actually Colleen's
So
fault.
I'll try not to fall. So let's take a moment and say hi to everybody. Say what's up. Who's in the house? Let's see. Good morning, Kelly. Suzanne. Claudia. Dominic. What's up, buddy?
Bunch of
Simran.
Germans,
The Germans in the house.
Yeah.
Posey. Hello. Brandon.
Sim was here yesterday. Now she's at home.
Yep. Hey, Sim. She sure was. We dropped her at the airport. You be good. Cynthia, Beck. Oh, hey, brother. Sending you love. Paritosh.
Rach and her dude.
Good morning, Rach and her dude. Maribel. Good.
Monica. Hi, babe.
Good. Emena, Monica, yeah. Ariane. What is
Raul.
Coach Raul. Good morning, sir. Natalia. Okay. Sweet guys. So good morning to you guys. Good to have you with us. Yeah, Ute. Hey, sweetie. Guys, this is, I don't know what number we are here on Sunday sessions.
I think it's 58 or something.
Yeah, it's like 58 or something. So, which explains sometimes why I literally don't have a subject. I mean, when you have 58, different mind science conversations, sometimes obviously you're going to be repeating material or subject matter, and I'm just like, I don't always want to come on and talk about something that I've discussed before. So I thought, well, Melayne and I will come on, and we'll just have a little chat, and maybe that chat will be of, maybe we can find something in the moment that, the conversation can open up to something real time for us as individuals. It's always nice to just get together, have a conversation, and see what naturally occurs from it. As a couple, we have our own day-to-day work that we're always going through, trying to work out the nuances and the subtle complications of staying together, staying in a committed relationship, and working through our own individual processes. So it's always, it can be helpful sometimes to just open up the floor and say, hey, is anybody going through anything that they would like to hear a different perspective on, or questions that come up for us? So that's really the idea right now, is to offer you guys the opportunity to, if you're interested, to just participate in what we would normally do in a mind science session here at in Montana at the school. We just sit around in a group when we do group work, and sometimes I just open up the floor and say, okay, what's going on for you guys? What's somebody working on right now? Or what is anybody struggling with or wrestling with, or want a different perspective or some counsel on? And that's it. So that's what we're playing with today. So I thought we would, start this morning by saying, okay, does anybody, if anyone, any things that anybody is going through right now, individual struggles, questions that are coming up, little things that you're wrestling with, anything you want to throw out there for the group conversation this morning? Take a second, think about it, chew on that for a moment, and throw it into the chat if you want. And in the meantime, do you have anything to add to that? Or?
No, I think as it unfolds.
Or we could just start telling you shit we fight about every day too. I mean, you could do it that way as well.
I was so happy that I didn't move that chair. That was very different.
Well, that's true too. That's true. Well, there is the when she first came over to the chair to begin with, she'd already established that somehow I was not handling business.
Oh, well, we didn't tell him whether you needed two chairs and 2 mics.
Well, that's actually true as well. We have a visitor. Okay. All right. Strangers pulling up onto the property. I got to get my shotgun out. Who's that? Who's that? Kimba's Hamlin. Okay, so yeah, I don't have to get the old gun out. You know what I mean? It's Montana, guys. It's Montana.
Oh, it's our neighbor, the people we met at the lake.
Oh yeah.
I think the husband of the friend.
Oh, okay, excellent. I thought I said Monday. Is today Sunday?
Yeah.
But that's fine. He can just come on and join us now. Excellent. Okay. So, guys, no one's put anything in the chat. So it's good to know that everyone's got everything worked out in life. Excellent. I love it. Good. Everybody's like, no, my life is perfect. I have no things to discuss.
Okay, Mateo is taking the first one.
Okay, Mateo's got one.
Can we talk about consensually open and fluid relationship, expansive, meaningful connections with different people? Mm-hmm.
Whoa, it's early in the morning for that conversation, but okay. I mean, I was gonna say shit. I didn't get my matcha, but okay. Can we talk about consensually open and fluid relationships? Well, to be full disclosure, we're not in a consensually open relationship, so we would not be discussing that from experience. So first, I just I think that's an incredibly important point to make. But we can discuss them because we can discuss what a relationship looks like that does allow for other constellations or configurations besides pure, monogamy. And then we can guess a little bit, make some stuff up around fluid and open relationships. I think the first thing that you start learning when you start heading in the direction of opening a relationship beyond closed monogamous structure is I think the ingredients, the building materials, must start off with two very secure people. If you do not have two very secure people, that's going to be difficult, obviously. But it's understandable that even a person who feels secure in a conversation about openness suddenly doesn't feel secure when something occurs, when you actually start to see the reality or experience the reality of an expansive concept. And so you can probably talk this thing to death before you ever try it out, and that's still not going to be experiencing it in a real way. So I think that this is probably one of the most important things that you have to consider in this experience is, do both parties have a secure relationship with themselves first? Like how much do you lean on your partner for feeling safe? That's already a good indicator. How much do I lean in? Because, like, as an example, some people are very independent and they don't lean in the direction of anyone to feel secure. And then there are people, of course, who lean heavily into their partners for feeling secure, or their friendships, whatever. And so I think that's A. And I think B, if you don't get clear with each other, really clear as to how secure your bond is, because I think that's, for Melayne and I, there's a constant revisiting and a confirmation of how committed we are to each other, and that nothing, and there's a verbalization of that no matter what happens, we're the core. No matter what occurs, that our commitment is to one another. So like that is, I think personally, very important confirmation, verbal confirmation, and constant affirmation of that we are a strong and a strong partnership, and the other stuff is just fun. It's just for, because most of the time when you're opening up a relationship in some way, you're doing it for fun. You're doing it for just to add some spice, some diversity, to do something a little different, just so you can explore your own personal sexuality. But it's typically not done because you're looking for another deep emotional connection. That's usually not the case. So I think it's important that you communicate, because if you're like, well, I'm looking for another deep, emotional connection, well, I think that you've got a different constellation to work with there.
Yeah, I actually wanted to touch base on that, because this is something that I was just thinking about even as you were talking. Just real quick, can you guys hear me a little better? Because someone was saying it was muffly. Maybe it was my hair. Better? Okay, good. That you have to be very honest about what your why is, right? Why do you want to open a relationship, or why do you want to explore and experience other people outside of the relationship you're in right now? Because it can obviously have different motives. One being you're definitely looking for more or different emotional, intimate connection, or you're looking for, like you were saying, more spice and fun, or just really curiosity about expanding your own sexuality. And I think obviously each reason will create or might create a different effect in your partner as you open up the conversation. And I think it is so crucial that there's no lying that there's really the microscopic truth that is being shared in that moment, because if you're not doing that, that will affect how you as that committed partnership will work through something like that. Also, obviously considering that we're all on a different timeline, right? It's very rare, I think, that people will in a relationship have the same timing on wanting to open up a relationship or wanting to explore something different. So you might surprise your partner by opening up this conversation. So I think it's really a matter of, as you open it up, the conversation first, that there is so much clarity around it that both parties still feel safe in their construct. And I agree 100% that it's always easy to talk about something and intellectualize it until it really happens, you know. And I can speak from experience, he can speak from experience, that we were both open-minded for experiences, and then they turn out different because they're truly happening, you know. So it's the same with a fantasy. You think it will be fun, but then you realize, no, I actually don't. I'm not really into it as I'm in it. So it's always important to, yes, I think, push the boundaries and be willing to go into experiences that we might be afraid of to a certain extent, and also just realize that it is okay to do something and realize that this is not what you think is what you want, and then reevaluate.
It's not what you thought you wanted.
It would be what it would be, not what you would want, what it would be. Yes.
And to strengthen that point, I think you need to know why you're doing it. It's so important to understand why you're doing this. Why are you seeking something outside of the relationship? And just being clear on that why is so difficult but so important, because when the old model of thought for humans when it comes to pair bonding and this sort of monogamous pair bonding is this idea that you say to yourself, if you want something outside of this, then what you're looking for is something better than this. You're looking for something more. We'll use very interesting terms to describe what we want. I want something more. I want something better. But you don't say that. Your partner typically will say, oh, you want something more. You want something better. You want something different. And these descriptors really take you in certain directions, because I want something more, I want something, better. You're looking for, I'm not exciting enough to you. I'm not this, the way we start to frame, ourselves based on our partner's preferences or interests is very interesting. So we have to really, the challenge that we are presented with when our partner says, let's forget sexuality. Let's just say, I'd like to actually hang out with other people besides you. Forget sexually. Just, I want to have, because, in a way, sexuality is an extension of just communion with people. So it's just, let's say, it's like, no offense, but I want to have, also other friendships. I want to be some people make me laugh. Some people make me, dip into a more philosophical part of my consciousness. Some people, you just have different connections with different humans. Mm-hmm. And so you have to ask yourself, from a sexual perspective, it's not that your partner, may not be fulfilling you. You're like, great, of course, I feel very happy and very fulfilled with our sexuality. And yet, there is also something about my internal fantasy, world that I also think would be interesting, something I've never experienced, something that could be, I guess what's interesting for humans is we in some ways, we want to have the freedom to experience a variety of different conditions, and that's why we travel. That's why we go see places we've never seen and do things we've never done, is we're interested in contacting our imagination in some way. So I don't think sexuality is any different than that. And I think that it's a very interesting thing that we do to ourselves, where we say, once we get into a particular kind of relationship, we say, well, that's no longer available, and that's something we should no longer do. And again, you have to figure out how that looks for you. Some people, we have friends, I have friends, but let's say we have friends that, in so many different constructs. One, as an example, the female is very sexually active. She's younger than the male, and so she also has, and I think you have to factor that in too, age differences, sexual appetites, because sexual appetite changes as you age. So, you might be a 31-year-old woman who's in the prime of her sexuality, and she may be with, someone like myself who's, going to be 50 this year, and I'm not in the prime of my sexuality. Sexuality is fun and but I'm not, I don't wake up every day with a heart on. You know what I mean? I'm not like an 18-year-old boy that's like, okay, I just have to have sex all the time. So there is a difference, you know what I mean, in age, and how age does affect your drive and what your sort of interests are. So whereas, so let's just take that relationship, older man, younger woman. Well, she may have an appetite for sexuality that's, much broader and more expansive at that time. And in this particular couple I'm talking about, he doesn't mind her being with men as long as he's present and he's curating the situation, and I believe he even has like conversations and interviews the men, and has a dialogue with them, and because he doesn't want to stop her interest in having that, but yet they,
he wants to be involved in a certain way.
But yet they agree to be a couple at the same time. So that's one configuration. There's just so many different ways to do it. But I think what's interesting is what it brings up, what it's obviously going to bring up for a male to hold space for his female partner to be with another male and not feel jealousy or not feel insecurity. Well, and obviously you're going to feel some level possibly of that, but be secure enough to hold space for that. These are very unusual configurations for a modern society, of course. But I think this conversation is starting to be more and more common, so we can't be surprised as younger generations coming up are more interested in talking about open relationships and polyamorous relationships and sharing space with other people. So we're just going to have to learn to have this conversation. You know what I mean? We're going to have to learn to talk about this and listen, even from our own discomfort, from a place inside of us where it's like, oh my God, I don't want to share somebody sexually that I'm in love with. And it's like, well, that's one perspective. And then another perspective is that I'm so in love with this person, I love them so much that them being happy makes me feel happy. So seeing them be happy with someone, as long as I'm present with them, that also makes me feel happy because I'm fully and completely in support and in love with their, with their pursuit of happiness. So that's, you could consider that even another level of love, of holding space for someone that you love to really, feel that. So these are complex conversations, and I understand how they would trigger people's sense of safety and comfort, because what this comes down to for us ultimately is how safe we feel, and what sharing sexuality, allowing our partner to share sexuality with someone else, what that ultimately means. Because these are deep questions that we don't want to stop oftentimes and actually ask ourselves and get to the bottom of. What does it really mean to hold space for our partner to allow, quote unquote, allow our partner to experience something sexual that they enjoy, but isn't necessarily a in-love experience. In other words, it's one thing to hold space for your partner while they fall in love with another person. Got it. And that's, that's not the same as holding space for your partner to enjoy something that is not an in-love experience, but rather just a purely pleasure experience.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point, because I feel like sometimes we forget, because we are in love with that person and we have shared life and experience with that person, that there still is sexuality without being in love. Because at the beginning of a relationship, you don't have the same foundation with that person, but you are sexual with that person, right? It seems like that as we progress into a relationship, we make sexuality mean something different, solely to the couple and the commitment and love and emotions, that we then sort of are blind to sexuality also being a different experience.
Yeah, could to strengthen that point, I think everybody in this room right now, everybody listening, this is a crucial thing. This is a crucial thought exercise for you with your partner. What does sex mean to you? Like, what does sex mean to you as a person? And I mean getting to the nitty-gritty of what does sex mean to you. Because some people say sex, some people come from a culture where if you have sex with someone, that means you're marrying them, okay? Some people come from a culture where sex just means a casual exchange of pleasure. How many of us would be okay with, once you had sex with someone, that means you have to marry them now? I'd say most people from the West, or most people in sort of super loose cultures, would be really disturbed by that idea, that if we've had sex, we're now married. But there are cultures that absolutely think that way. So nobody thinks about sex the same way. But so you've got to go ahead and get real clear with your partnership, with your partner, but this is with yourself first, and then within the partnership. What does sex mean for you? You individually.
And then what does it mean with your partner?
And now what does it mean as a couple?
Yes. And then added to it, what another experience can add actually to your sexuality, the partnership sexuality. So I think there's 3 layers in the end to it.
Yeah. So the configuration, just to be completely transparent, as we mostly are, and I say mostly being that I don't go into great detail, for the most part of our sex life, because I don't think it's necessary information. But just our general configuration in this current structure, because we started off monogamous, and then we moved into a structure where it's like, okay, we can agree. Melayne became interested in exploring her sexuality with another female, so we said, okay, we can explore that with another female, or Melayne can have that experience by herself. That's our current configuration, and that configuration works well for us based on our personal perceptions around sexuality and our individual preferences. So
right now, and like I said earlier,
yeah,
things change, right? And it's just a matter of, again, like he said, I'm 35. I didn't have 15 or 20 years that he already had to experience and explore his sexuality that I'm now just tapping into. And he might change, as he ages and interest changes. And that's the whole point, that there's a constant openness to reevaluating where each of us are, to see what is possible and what we can make work.
And to close that, what's the key element is that we know that we're committed to each other no matter what occurs there, and we learn that each other's happiness is, like, guys, why do you even get into a relationship to begin with if it's not to make the other person happy? If it's not to bring joy and happiness to her, why the fuck am I in this relationship anyway? Why are you in a relationship if your core intention is not to bring joy and happiness to the other person? I mean, if you got into a relationship to make yourself happy, well, then now you're always going to be self-serving. Your mentality is always going to be about me, me, me. But if you go into a relationship, you say, I'm here to bring joy to this person's life. I'm already happy. I was happy before I met her. So I didn't get in this relationship for her to make me happy. Does that make sense? So I came here to bring happiness to her. So if bringing happiness to her is her having that experience, then I've got to hold space for that and figure out how to do it. That's the work. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying that's the work.
Yeah, one last thought I have is just because it goes with what...
Well, I know. Go ahead. I'm just saying...
because you talk the whole time.
I know, but we can't keep making one last thought, so we're never going to end this thing.
Related to
go
what
ahead.
Other people are
All right,
saying.
go ahead.
My thought is make other people happy or your partner happy ties into supporting each other on their own journeys. And I think, like we said earlier, sexuality is just one container or one area of self-expression in our life. I mean, I think we would support our partners in making a different career choice or anything they felt really driven and motivated to change and explore themselves. And so again, it just comes down to why are we framing sexuality so different from any other life experience. Final thought.
That was a really good final thought. I have to say, yeah, that was a solid final thought. Yeah. Okay. We can't. As you say, we can't hear Melayne very well. The audio is exactly, guys. And you know why? Because Melayne had put her mic on upside down, and beside, you know. So yeah, you did. I fixed it for you, but it's all good. So hopefully that got cleared up. Also, someone said, also living together and working together, separation of private life versus work in a healthy way. Well, that's something that we know a lot about because for the past 6 years. We've been living together, working together, and building business together. We definitely have very little, and traveling together. We have very little separation. We are very, very comfortable being together, in a consistent way, which I don't think is normal or probably common. I think most people feel like they need space from their partner. They're like, okay, I just need to go and be in a different environment, doing something different, and then come back to feed this relationship again. We have one of these unique relationships where we can be together and in the same room all the time. I don't know what that, I have never really thought about why that works for us. I've never sat and deconstructed that, but my intuition just tells me that it happens to be that we are maybe a little older. We're not. I'm not still figuring out who I am, quote unquote. Maybe there's the ability. There's an ability to simply enjoy the moment as it is. I'm very happy connecting because again, we don't sit and just stare at each other all day. By the way, she's doing things that have her mind in other places in the world, and I'm doing things that have my mind in other places. So I don't always feel just because we're occupying the same room that we're also occupying the same state of mind. So I think that's important that you are still doing your own thing, but you can share space while doing that. And I think we just do that very skillfully and comfortably. And who knows why that could just be luck.
It's basically like we're sharing, like we're working out of a shared office space in a way, right? That we're both, yes, in the same room or maybe not even in the same room, but in the same house. And this is now, let's say, no TT environment. But we're very independent and we have different areas of, let's say, responsibility. So there is no constant, like he said, we're not constantly in communication.
Matter of fact, I'll tell you honestly, if we were, we'd kill each other. Because I'll tell you right now that we don't do super well when we're having to be in a constant interaction. It's good that we are thinking in different areas because and I don't know if any couple can do that well, but we don't. I'll just say that straightforward, that when we do start interacting with each other, tension arises.
Well, because we're both very hard-headed and strong. We have strong opinions. So I think and this is something we had to learn, to have those different areas of responsibility. Like we have each our cantina. I think, who said that to us?
Well, we each have a container, right?
Not container, like a bodega. I don't remember. I think Kemba was that. He said, don't interfere with each other's decisions and areas of responsibility.
Right. Right. Melayne handles administration for the school. I don't involve myself in it. She runs it 100%. I laugh when people ask me questions like, so, do you know what time this is? Or that I'm like, no one tells me. No one tells me that. No one wants me to know that. So I basically have an area of focus that is specifically teaching. That's what she knows. That he teaches, and that's his hyper focus is on curriculum and teaching. And then I might mess with some other creative things like designing, a T-shirt or whatever that I do. But and then here at the house, building, Kim and I, anything that needs to be built around the house, we handle all that. So when the garden's getting built or the house is something's getting repaired. So, and Melayne handles administration 100%. So I don't even know, as an example, a student will show up for training, somebody that is a friend of mine, like someone, because you build friendships with your students, of course. Someone will roll in day of training and I'm like, hey, what's up? I had no idea they were coming. She doesn't even tell me who's coming to TT. So we really do have a separation in what she does and what I do. So I can tell you that, we're no experts on how to work together, outside of one little detail, which is if you are going to work together, your partner has their area of responsibility and you don't go into it. You don't fuck with it. You don't challenge it. You don't mess with it. It's what they do. And then you do what you do, and you just leave each other alone because you can't be each other's bosses and have balance and harmony. Because if you try to be each other's bosses, you're going to have a shit show on your hands. So it's like she does her thing, I do my thing, and then now, if I fail in my thing, I get in trouble. I'm using a very silly term, but I'm just being. And if she does something, she gets in trouble. Like there'll be a moment where I'm like, "Are you serious? How did you make that decision?" Or she'll say to me, "How did you make that decision? That was a terrible decision." And so we will hold each other accountable for decisions. But it's just so rare because we both work diligently to be precise and skillful and efficient at our craft. So, obviously you have to have two people you trust to do their work well if you're going to work together.
And I think, that's actually a really good point. Trusting each other, right, and a similar work ethic, that helps for sure. Not necessarily the same way of working, because we're actually very, very different in our style or how we even approach what we do and how we think about it. But I think what makes the difference for us too, it's the overarching vision. And we had a whole, I think, mind science on that one time. The vision and then the mission we're both on together, right? In our own ways. And obviously having the same passion and seeing what Budokon is and what we want to create with this is what also glues us together in this mission. Because I knew when I married him that I was also marrying Budokon, but I wanted to, right? For me, it was a very conscious decision that I will make this mine too. And I think that is very important, that you do feel equal. And this is something that I had to work on, especially at the beginning. I had to own my position. But what was always clear is that I was there for the right reasons, right? And this I think also makes us work in that context of the business side of it.
Okay, so we have another question. How do you revisit your relationship to reinforce commitment? Well, I have to visit her every day. I mean, she's right. If I look over to the right, she's usually sitting next to me. So how do we revisit it? I think that the question, besides being silly, the question, how do you, check back in and see where you're at in your relationship, because you're constantly getting out of tune. A relationship's like a guitar. You strum on it and you're constantly playing the guitar, and sometimes you're fucking banging the shit out of that guitar and you're playing hard, and then naturally the strings are going to come out of tune, and you need to go in and you need to tune each string back so that you can get your guitar back in tune again. Make sense? Just from the perspective of a musician or of an instrument, being that the relationship is an instrument. And you have to stop sometimes, because when you're playing music and you're just going, let's say you're playing a concert and it's just 2 hours of, you might not hear your guitar slowly coming out of tune until you get to the end, and everything's quiet again, and you just strum it and you're like, oh shit, we got a problem. So I think that you have to this would be my advice to the question, get in a place where you can be quiet so you can really hear whether you're making a G or a D, whether the note is crisp and tuned. And the only way to do that is to get quiet. So you can't try to establish where you're at in the middle of the concert. You know what I'm saying? You have to wait till the concert ends. You have to take a moment. Things need to get quiet. And you sit down together and see where you're at. Does that make sense? Because you got all these kids, and you got all this noise, and you got all your family, and you got all this stuff going on, and you're trying to evaluate where you two are at in the middle of all that. It's very difficult. So you need a little bit of stillness and just emptiness and quiet time to really get back in tune, so you can hear how to even get back in tune with each other. So that would be my basic advice: is take a moment to get quiet together. Go somewhere where you are quiet together. Don't go to Las Vegas. You know what I mean? Because people think, oh, let's go on a vacation. I'm like, don't go to more noise to figure out what you sound like. That doesn't make sense, to go to more noise and distraction. Go camping. Go somewhere where it's just you two and there's nothing else going on, and all you can hear is each other. And then that's a great way to get tuned, but it's not to go be in more noise. I think that's an important.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Because that's even when I say, talking about the 5 languages of love, quality time to me is exactly that time to just revisit us, right? In only us, being present to each other and seeing each other again from the eyes of, oh, this is my husband, this is my wife or my partner, instead of, we're running a business together, the kids, so every other noise that he was saying, but that you're actually just tapping back into that space together and see, like you said, revisit where you're at with each other.
A question came up: what if the other one does not know what makes him or her happy? Sometimes people don't explore that for themselves. Well, and this is why we're talking about silence. You can't always figure out what makes you happy when you're with your partner. Sometimes you don't know what makes you happy until you get by yourself. And that means, by yourself, not go hang out with a best friend, not go spend time with your mother and father, your family. Sometimes being by ourselves helps us really know what we do need. And again, it could be going somewhere to visit family, but I'm just saying it's certainly hard to evaluate our own sort of level of happiness at times, or our own motivations or whys or what's driving us anymore when we're in it. So we got to get out of it sometimes. So I definitely highly recommend people take time for themselves to go be alone in some capacity so that they can remember who they are alone. It's hard to remember who you are when you were single or by yourself, when you're in a deeply committed relationship, when you're in a marriage, when you're in something that's got you entangled in family and business and life. It's hard to remember you when you were just you as an autonomous individual. So it's important that we keep going back there to remember who we are and keep checking in and saying, am I happy? Am I on course within my internal compass, or have I gotten off course and I'm now operating off of someone else's idea of happiness? I'm in the direction of someone else's idea of family or of a lifestyle. That's really important. And then you got to come back together and see if you can tune in harmony to each other's compass where you both want to go together. That's tricky. That's fucking super tricky, right? I mean, that's not easy to do that. Two individuals with different desires and different everythings, trying to tune together and go in a singular direction. It takes a lot of skill to do this, and it's not normal. If it was normal, there wouldn't be a 50 to 60% divorce rate. You understand? Like, that's why it's not normal. Look at the success rate of marriage. It's terrible. I always say this: if it was a business, no one would go into it because it's got a horrible rate of success. So marriage, modern marriage, monogamous modern marriage is not natural, and that's why it takes so much work to make it work. Where we used to live, again, tribally in small groups, and the way we were constructed, it was just a very different experience. And so now we've changed that model, and we're trying to make that model work. But statistically, unless you just reject numbers and you just don't agree with science, but scientifically, marriage doesn't work very well. It's about half the time it works, and that's not even factoring in how many people are happy. That's how many people didn't get divorced. You know what I mean? So when you're like, well, 60% of people stay together. Yeah, and how happy are they? And under what condition? Yeah, how happy are they? So then you've got another number you've got to look at. So how many people are happy from, they're like, man, this was a great, I've enjoyed the fuck out of my life being married to this person. Maybe it's 20% that or just, and the other people, the other number, they just fucking gritted, they toughed it out and just made it work. I don't know, but I can just tell you, to be in a happy marriage takes a shit ton of work. That's a technical term, but I'm sure you appreciate what I'm saying.
And one thought here also, I feel like sometimes your partner can show up as a mirror in a certain way, that they might see something in you, like a coach, like a teacher, right? They see something in you or potential in you that you haven't really either allowed yourself to look at, but they see it for you, and might invite you into that space. I feel like there's obviously some positives in being in a relationship and getting challenged. And there's also obviously the other side to it, where if you don't know yourself, you cannot get into a space where you then feel resentment for the other person offering something or wanting to create something that you just agree to without really doing the work to, like Ute was saying, know themselves and explore themselves. So there are two sides to it, which I see, and both obviously require, one, the trust in the other person that they do know you, but in the end, it's you that will only know for yourself what you can do and what you want to do in a moment.
Okay, so let's just do two more questions, and then we're at our point. So I want to get to these real quick. So can we see polyamory as a stimuli, for instance, like experiencing a journey in a foreign country? I think yes. I think that you can see having a polyamorous relationship, or having a third party involved, or inviting, this is the concept. Not pure of polyamory is sort of like being in a relationship with a third party, specifically if you're going to really define polyamory in its more technical way. But if we're talking about, can it be like visiting a foreign country, somebody's asking. Yeah, I mean, it's a journey, it's an experience, it's something you can do together to see how you feel about it. And it can be a really beautiful connection that you really enjoy. And it can also be full of insecurities and landmines. There's all kinds of things that can come up for you making the decision to bring a third person into your bedroom or into your relationship. I mean, if you're talking about building a relationship with a third person, that I think it takes us in the direction of another conversation. But if we're talking about just sharing space, sexually sharing space, can that be an adventure? Absolutely. And it can be incredibly fun and incredibly rewarding, and you can enjoy that if you're both incredibly secure and clear. And it's all about your personal work. It's all about what you've done with you. Because you're going to bring all your shit to that moment. It's not that's what's going to happen. Your shit is going to show up. And if you haven't gotten your shit cleaned up and clear, well, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be an adventure. You're not going to Rome, Well,
and I think that's important too. What is the destination? Who is that third person you're choosing, right? Because you can make mistakes in that too. How evolved is that person, and how good has the communication been between the three of you? Because there can be surprises.
Yeah, so you definitely want to. There's the idea of choosing the third person who can hold space for the two. There's all kinds of interesting ways of approaching that. Last thing. So, curious to know more about your thoughts toward bringing more humans into the world. How would you balance the tensions between the logical mind not wanting to add to the issue of overpopulation and perhaps an emotional or even primal desire to want to have children? This is a great question. We've definitely worked with this question numerous times. It's really tricky because, ethically, I feel like the earth is overpopulated, and my ethics as a human, my morals, my values are like, don't continue to bring more people onto the planet when it's already, has too many humans. So we made a conscious decision not to have a child. I have a child from a previous marriage, and she's amazing, and I'm incredibly grateful. And she's like our, daughter together as well. But she's 18, and then Melayne and I came together, and I was like, wow, if I really, I would love to co-parent with this person to bring a human in the world. But then I have to ask myself, how much of that is just me wanting to have an experience with her, and what does that experience, what's its impact? Because it's very selfish. You understand, one thing about having children is it's very selfish. When you want to have kids, it's for you. It's not for the benefit of the planet. It's not for the benefit of anything. It's you. You want to have the experience of seeing yourself replicated and then raising this replicated version of you in the world. That's what you want, and you want to have it with this person you love. I totally get it. But the reality is there are impacts and implications to that decision now that there weren't, even 50 years ago. As shocking as this idea is, only 50, or I think it's 50 to 70, I can't remember the exact number, but like 50 years ago, there were only I think it was the Spanish flu was 1913, 1917? 17? So the Spanish flu was 1917. There were 2 billion people on the planet. 2 billion. There are now almost 8 billion people on the planet. Between 1913, between 100 years. It's fucking incredible. How do we keep doing this? Can we keep doing this? So I understand why we want to keep procreating, creating children, and I also understand that it's not sustainable to just do it in an unchecked manner. So I get both sides of it. I love my child, don't get me wrong, but I also made a conscious decision we made a conscious decision to say, well, we're just not going to do that, and we're going to enjoy a different configuration of a relationship. And I don't think anyone is wrong for having a child, by the way. It's not a judgment. It's just a personal decision where you sit and you go, well, does that match my personal ethic? My personal moral compass tells me that I shouldn't do that right now. And again, if someone else does it, I definitely don't look at them and go, oh, baby maker. That doesn't even occur in my brain. It's just for me, I recognize for myself that doesn't align with the way I see the world. And that's it. That's all I can do.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a statement to that.
Well, very same thought. As a female, obviously, and being the one who would, or is made, designed by nature to have children, the way I release the tension is exactly through the logical thought and what I make my values, right? How I see the world and how I want to exist within that, and the impact that it would cause to have a child. Can I flirt and romanticize the idea of having a child? Sure, because I think it's just our nature, right? I think for female, it's something that is very innate to us. But then I also look at the context I live in, and based on that, I decide that this is not necessary if we want to go back into the balancing element of necessary, unnecessary. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. And I think this is also what releases the tension for me personally, that I don't feel like having a child is necessarily for me to be fully expressed as a female. Because I feel like a lot of women feel this way. They only see their purpose, or one of their main purposes, to be a mother. I feel like I can tap into the archetype or the role of a mother in other places. So that to me is
that's
what,
powerful.
yes.
Yeah, that's a powerful add there. Is it I find that I really like the way you said that. I can find that the qualities of mothering in other places. I think that's really a really powerful self-awareness, because I think we think, oh, the only place I can feel mom or I can feel dad is with my own child, but I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot of places you can feel the mother or the father archetype, and you can act that out and play that role in a lot of ways. So I think that's
and
really
I'm sure
powerful.
other women might debate that point, and I can hear obviously their perspective of, well, you haven't really experienced having something grown from you, in you, and birthing it, and
Well,
having
you can't
that.
know that.
But
You can't know that.
and again, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, there are
Yes.
qualities. There are qualities of birth you just can't know, and without birthing
Going through it.
a human. So
Yes.
obviously, that's a given. But I tell you one thing: most, I think the greater or the lion's share of the experience of parenting will not be the brief time that you carried or that you birthed a human, but it will be that you cared for them and parented them. And what that's the big stuff. And I can speak to that as a father. That's the big stuff. I remember my child being born. I remember the brief time that her mother was pregnant, but it's the last 18 years that I can that are sort of have left a greater impression on me as a human being. That's Doris says, I honestly think it's difficult to involve another person only on a physical sexual level. If then I don't feel like wanting it at all. I want to choose what I feel drawn to as a whole, and then it soon gets complicated. So Doris, to your point, that's a really great question. You're like, well, I want to have a connection, an emotional connection with a person that I bring into my space sexually, but now that's going to complicate things. And what I would say is that's a perspective. If you only think you can connect with a person sexually once you're emotionally entangled with them, then that means you've got a maybe that's a poor choice of word. You have a very particular way of understanding sexuality. You may want to go back and redefine what sexuality is. In other words, when you watch a porno, as an example, can you get turned on? okay, yeah, I can watch a porn, I can get turned on. Well, if you can get turned on, you don't have an emotional connection to the characters in the porn, but yet maybe you can still feel some sexual excitement from watching it, which means you're not emotionally connected to these people. So I think that it would require us to actually expand our definition of sexuality and sexual connection to say, I don't have to be emotionally entangled with a person to enjoy the experience of being sexual with them. You know, when you masturbate, are you in love with yourself? You know what I mean? Think about that concept. When you touch, yeah, I mean, yes, of course, but yet at the same time, no. You're not having an emotional relationship with yourself. You're touching yourself because you want to have an orgasm. So you don't entangle some emotional, complexity into it, do you? No, you want to come, so you're like, oh, sweet, I'm going to touch myself. So I think that we do have the capacity to be purely sexual with ourselves and with others if we just let ourselves, enjoy that without saying this needs to be some committed emotional, complexity. But is it, Doris? Yes, okay, but I don't think I need to live it that way just to have sex with us. Doris, look, you can do whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. I'm not having a debate with you. I don't, you know what I mean? Like you're like, oh, I'm, whatever comes out of your hard head is right. So it's like, you want to be right, be right. Obviously, I can't live that way. Well, don't live that way. I can't, the same thing is said out of, every person. Anybody who, this is the important thing about understanding human consciousness. Whatever you believe is true. Period. You can't do it that way. You're right. You can't do it that way. You should do it. Again, I'm not here to debate. You ask a question, I'll answer the question, but I'm not going to sit and try to convince anybody in this group to be more expansive or whatever. It's like whatever you say is true. And just remember that. If you look at someone and you say, well, I think this, well, you're right. It's true. If you look at a person and say, you're an asshole, well, it's true. To them, to you, they're an asshole. And that's just how it is. Whether they are objectively an asshole or not, it's true they're an asshole to you. So whatever you believe is the way the world is. So go, I'm not here to tell you guys to believe or don't believe. So that's your business. Let me see. Let's see. Coach, how do you forgive to move in? I'm going to make this our last question right now. Is how do you forgive to move on in a relationship when there's so much going on in our lives and the memory of things? Guys, it takes a lot of skill to let something go, a lot of cognitive skill. People don't understand that cognition or thought, the ability for the brain to process information and then also do the work that lets go of things, because there's the prefrontal lobes, which of course are being very practical about the world, and then you've got other part of the brain that is dealing with emotion, how you feel, your safeness, your insecure or versus secure attachment to the world around you. It's a very difficult thing for you as a human being, for me, for us, to get to a point where we can let things go. Letting something go is an entire cognitive process. Now here's the thing. It's all about meaning and what you make things mean. Because if you come up to me and say, well, you're the ugliest Chinese person I've ever seen. And I'm like, well, number one, I'm not Chinese, so I don't even understand what the fuck you're saying. And so in other words, my brain is not going to have any relationship to what you just said to me, even though what you said was mean or designed to be hurtful. I don't relate to what you said, so I don't even hold it. I'm not even going to, in any way, probably even remember that statement in 10 days. Because it literally has nothing to do with me. So it's amazing how someone could say something to you that you don't own because it doesn't seem to have any relationship to you, and you can just let it completely go. versus someone will say something to you that you actually identify as true within yourself. So it's like you're a stupid woman, and you recognize that you are a woman, and that you do sometimes do things that you think are stupid, and so suddenly it's like, whoa, 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 I identify with that statement. I identify with that observation this person's making. And as soon as you identify with something someone says, it's yours now. Do you understand me? It's yours now. You own it now. And now once you've decided to own it, because again, they didn't make you own it, you adopted it. That was a choice. Once you own it and you bring it in, now you got to decide how to give it back and let it go. Turn it back over, release it. And so it's a skill we learn to own and identify with things. We also have to equally learn how to give them away. It's the same thing with possessions. You've learned how to go out and possess things. You've learned how to go out and obtain things. You've also learned how to give things away. Now, you have to learn to do that with experiences too, with memories, with moments in life, not just objects. Because, and by the way, some people struggle to give away an object. I have. Have you not ever struggled to give something away that you love, that's meaningful to you, that has some place in your life that reminds you of something, your grandfather's war medal or whatever, and you're like, that reminds me of my grandfather. I can't. So we learn to possess things, but we also learn to release things. But we typically don't think of that as a skill, but it is a skill. So you have to learn by doing the work of letting go. And letting go means understanding that that moments that happen, things that occur, things that are said, things that are done are simply occurrences, and those occurrences, once they're done, no longer exist. So it depends on how much you want to play with fantasy, because the past is a fantasy and the future is the fantasy. They're both, the past is, again, a remembered thing, and the future is an imagined thing, and neither exist. So if you don't know how to live in the moment well, and you love being stuck in the past, or you love being stuck in future possibility, anxiety of future, and regret of past, then that's you in a relationship, and that's what it's like to be married to you. That does not sound fun. I don't want to be married to a person who can't shake off the past and who can't live in the moment and not constantly worry about the future. You have to practice being present to the moment. And the better you are at being in the moment as it is, the less the past can hold you, or the future can lure you. The past anchors you, and the future calls to you all the time. Does that make sense? And you want the ability to not be lured constantly forward or anchored constantly back, and be in the fucking moment. Learn to live in the moment as it is, and you won't be constantly remembering and thinking of all that business. So it takes work, but it's all about presence of mind, the skill to be present, which, by the way, is meditation. So meditate more. If you don't have a meditation practice, that's on you. But that's the work of meditation, is the practice of being present to the now. And the more you do that, the more skillful you'll be. So,
one thought for that, I think there's also two layers to it, to me personally. I think the first one is forgiving the person, and then the second one is forgiving the action, which I think forgiving the person might be the first step, where you're present to the person you're with, right, and the person you have chosen, if we again talk about relationship, and the compassion and empathy to forgive them. Because that will also lead you to forgive their actions, which is just a momentary window and choice. But you know who this person truly is, right? And you can forgive them, and then you will be able to process and wrestle with the occasion. I think that has helped me to me personally, to forgive, right? I've forgiven the person first, and then with that, I was able to forgive the action.
Okay, guys, it's been a great Sunday session. I hope that some of these questions serve you, and they can make some difference in your life. Thank you for making a difference in our life by showing up and spending time with us and supporting what we're doing. So we're grateful, as always, incredibly grateful. So thank you so much for being with us. And now we're going to switch things over to some movement. It's time for movement practice. Movement with Melayne. Our segment, Movement with Melayne. Okay, mobility movement.
We're doing
Mobility
some
mobility movement with Melayne. So you guys are going to do that, and we'll see you next Sunday. And thanks again for all your love and support. And Doris, stop being so hard-headed, and just your work. Okay, excellent, my friends.
Okay, see you guys in a moment.
Okay, see you in a moment, guys. Take 5.